Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Roundtable Show. It's episode 586. Got a great panel, got some great stories. I'm going to let the panel quickly introduce themselves. I'm going to let Vito, friend of the show, introduce himself. Vito, would you like to do that?
Hello, everyone. It's good to be back. And I'm Vito. I'm the founder of Atarim, which is a platform that helps freelancers and agencies that build websites for clients deliver project fast through collaboration and project management.
That's great. And I've got Uncle Spencer. Uncle Spencer, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. Spence from WPLaunchify.com.
Actually, people think you are my uncle, actually, Spencer.
Well, we don't like to talk about it because your sister and I don't talk as much anymore as we used to before you were born and so forth, but it's nice.
I know I've been an embarrassment for many years, but there we go. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
John from Lockdown Design and SEO.
That's great. And we've got Heather. Heather joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself, Heather?
Yeah, I'm Heather Renzi from The Difference Consulting and author of Birth of a Unicorn.
And before we go into the main stories and announcements, I just want to talk about our major sponsor. That is Custis. They're a podcast hosting company, but much more. It's all built on WordPress technology, great interface. I was looking to move my podcasting platform provider. I paid my money. I got into discussions with them. I mentioned that I was looking for a major sponsor, and they said, "We want to be that, Jonathan." It was a beautiful partnership, and all I can say about their customer service is it's blind, but it's amazing. And the interface compared to the platform which I was using is in a different world, the UX design. So if you're looking to get into podcasting or you're advising clients, you need a good RS feed and a good platform. And that's what you're going to get with Castos. And by the way, they're about half the price of the competition. So it's a win-win. So go over there, tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonics site, and that helps them and helps the show. So Vito, you were mentioning somebody in the community has recently died and you wanted to mention it. So over to you, Vito.
Yes, so Puneet Charlotte, who is the founder of IdeaBox, unfortunately died from a car accident on Saturday, and it was very young, and I got to meet Puneet at some of the WordCamps back in 2019, and since then we had a few calls together, and I just found him a very kind person, a very driven person that was one of the inspiring people that I I got in touch with within the community. But I also think that his persona is a great personification of our community, just being kind, hardworking, making sure that he shares his knowledge as much as possible. And he was a great friend, and I'm very sorry for his loss, for his passing. And just condolences to everyone involved.
That's fantastic, and it's always very sad to hear of somebody of such a young age dying suddenly like that. My condolences go to his family and his friends. So, on to something more light-hearted. Let's go on to story one. A continuing of the saga of Wix against WordPress. Dear Matt Merweg, another open letter from the Wix CEO. I'm not even going to attempt to. Vito, how do you pronounce this gentleman?
Yeah, I don't have this article. I have other ones here in front of me. But
right. Spencer, you want to attempt this gentleman's name?
Avishai Abrahami.
Avishai Abrahami.
Avishai Abrahami.
Abrahami. Right. That is a mouthful for a semi-dyslexic Englishman. So there we go. So Heather, do you want to have a go at this? Have these two gentlemen, even though they've got great responsibilities, maybe got a little bit too much time on their hands?
Well, I've talked about how Wix. So this article is about Wix and WordPress and the friendly or not so friendly, I guess, rivalry that they've had over the years. And the thing that is important about this article is that the CEO of Wix is writing to Matt Mullenweg and saying that, like, hey, stop hating on Wix. Like, we're here, we're fulfilling a need in the market, and there are people that use us for the things that we do, and you're basically defaming us for stuff that's not true. And he's pointing out that like, when they're talking about WordPress, when they're comparing Wix to WordPress, they're not lying. they're not misinforming people, and that's important. It's important when, like, especially in today's world, that you're transparent about stuff. So, like, when Wix is, he's just flat out saying, Matt, like, it's okay to have a friendly rivalry. It's okay to say, like, you think your company is better because of certain things, but don't flat out lie about Wix. And I think that's the point of this. So yeah, like, Wix is for certain people and WordPress is for certain people, and there's room in the market for both. But, like, lying about your competitors is never right.
That's a really interesting. So Vito, would you agree with Heather that that Wix have got a point, that what was said about them isn't really based on truth compared to their remarks, which are opinion but are based on facts?
So, like, this kind of it seems like it's all coming from this latest campaign that Wix went out a couple of weeks ago, mentioning the fact that they just ran a bunch of ads, sent letters. Maybe you even got one, Jonathan, if you were lucky enough.
No, I don't. I've got the leading podcast in the WordPress space. Been running it for 5 years. Have almost over 4,000 a month downloads, but no, I'm not on their radar, Vito. I wasn't considering influencer in the WordPress space at all, Vito.
No
I thought I would get
no headset, no t-shirt, nothing, Vito.
So first of all, you need to email Wix straight away.
John, you can be like, this is episode 586, and I didn't even get a lousy t-shirt.
It's only been going for 5 years, the bloody podcast. I think it's the longest consecutively running focused WordPress podcast. Maybe the A to Z of plugins and the Matt report. I don't know. I think they started before me, but I've been churning out the episodes, haven't I, folks? So, but no t-shirt, no headphones, nothing, Vito. I'm not bitter, am I, Vito?
It doesn't sound like it. But when it comes to the point of what they were making on these ads, it's true. It's like WordPress is this kind of a bit of deformed baby that you love because it's yours. So. So it has its quirks, but we all kind of learn to work around them and learn to work with them. But what they were pointing out was true. There is place for rivalry, and I think their campaign, as much as it kind of stings us, and it apparently feels like they don't really know our community. They don't know what this community is about. So, obviously we didn't take it too well, but we were all talking about this. We're, a bunch of people were waiting for the headphones to come in the mail. So it worked. From a marketing aspect.
I have absolutely
I'm kidding. But
I have absolutely no idea why Matt Mullenweg gave them all that, even responded, or gave these people even 2 minutes of his consciousness, you know, to say that their market share is insignificant compared to WordPress would be a slight understatement. What do you reckon, Spencer?
Well, let me finish my point. I
Right.
agree with this in terms of market share, but it is a point. You know, when I was building websites for clients, Wix came up as an example of like, why is this website? Why are you charging like this? Wix is free. My answer was, go and build your own website on Wix if you want. You know, but the idea is that the game that they're starting to play now, I think it actually creates nice rivalry and nice conversation from both of these platforms. So I understand why he gave the time to actually respond to these messages. He's trying to be the leader of the community, or one of the leaders of the community, if you will. So he has to stand up for his deformed baby, really, and you know, talk on his behalf. And I see that. When it comes to lying, I had this experience myself with some competitors that still have pages on their websites that are just like completely wrong. And that is just annoying. I'm not going to go out and send emails and write public articles about this. But I think, you know, just do your thing and everything will work out. You know, I think that's my mentality.
I'm going to blow all of your minds. Maybe not Heather's, because I think Heather already knows this stuff because she's in that space. Let's play a little game for our listeners. Once upon a time, there were two little companies. One of the companies took a shit ton of venture capital money, maybe 600 million or something, 617 million. And it had annual revenues in 2020 of either 120 million or nearly $1 billion. Let's say that little company was Automatic. Which is the revenue figure for 2020 of that little company that took 600 million of venture capital? Was it nearly $1 billion or was it $122 million? Anybody? Raise a hand if you think it's the lower number. Okay. Raise your hand if you think it's the higher number. Okay. Heather's undecided or not playing my game. Well, here's the bad news for...
Heather doesn't play games.
Here's the bad news. Here's the bad news for the people who think that taking venture capital money and then getting into fisticuffs with another company as if they were your, you know, deadbeat little cousin that keeps bothering you goes bad. Automatic took in $600 million and as of 2020 had $120 million of revenue. Wix, on the other hand, had nearly $1 billion of revenue. 7 times, maybe 8, depending on how you round it off. So for Matt to go out and pretend like he's the big brother and his little nephew or something is bugging him is freaking hilarious to me, because the Wix founder acted like the adult in the room and has absolutely true points about, wait a second, big brother, you were the one that started doing this to us, and you're the one that copied us, and you're the one that did these things. So it really doesn't reflect well on the person who shall be nameless who runs Automatic, because he's borrowed 5 times more money than they made in revenue still, whereas the other guy, I don't know what Wix's VC borrowing is. I can look here. Their liability sheet shows that I don't know. It doesn't even show long-term debt. Not more than they're making. I can't make a guess without taking a moment to read it. But let's just say they're not known for the fact that they took $600 million. So, long story short, my little game aside, I find this whole thing very telling, because Wix could very easily make all kinds of, you know, look at you guys kind of comments, and they don't. They just get on with their shit, and that's that.
I think thank you for that, Spencer. I think you just explained very coherently why Matt Manweg got so upset in a way. I think we just found out the reason, really.
Oh, it's $300 million, roughly. The Wix shareholder equity was $0.3 billion. So let's call it, I don't know if that's the right number, if that's the right number.
There are listeners and viewers. We have I think, thrown light on the mystery in a way. I don't think you would have found out on a other podcast. John, any last remarks about this
Yeah,
affair?
honestly, I didn't like Matt's or the person. I didn't like their comment about, comparing this to an abusive relationship, locking people in the basement.
Yeah, it was all a bit too far, really. Wasn't it?
Dude, it's software. It's software. It was you don't talk like that. But the Wix CEO, they really did kind of. I really think that they thought this out a lot better than people give them credit for, because
It was
he
just a
came with
campaign.
facts. He didn't resort to name calling, saying like it's dirty tricks, or things like this. And quite honestly, this campaign, people played into this campaign. They fell for this thing. They're like, oh, we'll never use Wix. But people were getting all in their feelings about not getting headphones. Like, it was like a validation. Like, if I didn't get headphones, like, I'm not worthy. And all the people who did get it, they tweeted about it. This is money well spent for Wix. I mean, and the WordPress community, like the influencers and stuff, not the target. The target is the people who are going to build their website from scratch. And Wix is getting free publicity. And everyone from the CEO of Automatic on down has played into this. And we're doing it right now. So I think that they really did think this out a little bit better than people are giving them credit for.
By the way, two things just to fill in: $391 million of liabilities on the balance sheet of Wix, which I assume is accounting for, the VC investment, if there is such a thing still. But it's an Israeli company, and I think that accounts for something as well, because let's leave it to Vito to speak to this, but like the companies that are doing some of the most progressive stuff coming out of Israel, and if you understand the mindset and the culture there, it isn't surprising how this thing is unfolding, because these guys are like, look at Vito. I mean, it's like, come, let's have fun, hang out, we can all make money, blah, blah, blah. Why can't we all get along? Let's make, that's how it works. And Matt isn't getting the joke. I'm sorry, the man who runs Automatic isn't getting the joke, so to speak, because I don't see any reason with Wix's balance sheet this incredibly strong why they would even want to be in any kind of fisticuffs with WordPress. They're not really competing.
Well, they are competing with them. Like when it comes to revenue, yes, of course. It's a SaaS business for Wix, so it's a completely different model compared to WordPress as an open source project. But the market share is there, so it's only natural for a company to try and bite into the market share. I wouldn't be surprised to see Shopify running a campaign about WooCommerce or something like that. Makes sense. That's the nature of the game. We're in business.
It certainly does.
One last thought, too. I would like to see numbers of this 40% that we always are very, very proud of. Like, we're part of the 40%. We're in the community, so, we need to, feel very good about this. How much of that is on WordPress.com? And is that a number that's comparable? Yeah, I know. Is that a number that's comparable to Wix and Squarespace? Because that is what the product roadmap is for, is to compete as the SaaS hosted platform against those two. The self-hosted part of it is an enormous part of that. But the real battlefield is for their hosting on .com. And that's a number that I don't know what it is, but I would imagine it's not that much. That 40%.
John brings up another interesting point, which is something I've harped on, but before let's close the door on it, is that is one of the primary difficulties with the naming convention, but also the business model of WordPress. Nobody who comes into this understands, because it doesn't exist elsewhere, with maybe one exception, that there's WordPress.com, which is a hosted model, but yet not really a closed platform, because you can still add in certain plugins, but not other plugins. And, you have to understand it in detail. And then there's WordPress.org. When you look at how the company operates, it's also not clear, like Wix. All the revenue in Wix is coming from Wix.com, the platform, just like Weebly or Squarespace or anything. Whereas in WordPress, there's a mysterious, like, where is the money coming from? Because we have this huge ecosystem of the .org, which is coming from third parties, but somehow Jetpack tries to get its hooks into there. And yet when they talk about the real revenue, the 120 million, it's kind of from VIP hosting and other VIP services on .com. So I would argue that while obviously we love the platform and there's all this potential, that WordPress sort of has the greater liability here because they're not as focused on like everybody understanding this is WordPress. They've split themselves into two personalities, and you got to understand which day of the week it is and where you're coming from to use either one of them, because neither one of them is really as focused and as clear. You go to Wix or Squarespace, Weebly, Shopify, you know exactly what you're getting. Not true with WordPress.
Right, yeah, thanks for that. On to the next story. Amazon and Apple, Google and Facebook signed public letters supporting voting rights. What did you think of this one, John?
Racism is bad for business. And it's really, really sad that corporations, greedy corporations, are the ones that are kind of standing in the way of this. Because some of these politicians, like, they'll obviously, the most important thing to them is maintaining white supremacy. And all these voting acts that are making it harder and harder to actually, for people to just vote, you know, ripping out ballot boxes, making it illegal to give you a bottle of water as you're standing in line to vote, closing voting places in predominantly Black and Latino neighborhoods. That's all, you know, these attempts to suppress the vote. But if you look at the long history of America, United States, this is not uncharacteristic. I mean, a lot of people are saying, like, why is it like this? So, you know, it's just very sad that the corporations might be the major roadblock to these attempts to go back to the Jim Crow era. But like I said, they've determined in 2021, maybe this would have been different 70 years ago. But in 2021, they have determined that racism is very bad for business.
Yeah, so Heather, why do you think, you know, Amazon, through their anti-trade union activities, and, you know, these companies are no friend of organised labour or of any kind of real improvement in workers' conditions, are they? Why do you feel, is it just a publicity to help with the way that people think they are? Is that why they've done this ever?
I mean, I think that in general, while Amazon has issues with their automation, with their pick facilities, with their driver. I mean, their Amazon and the other people named in this article, Google and Microsoft and all of these companies, they definitely have labor issues to deal with on their own. But the problem happening in Georgia and Pennsylvania and other states where they're keeping people, where they're disenfranchising voters, where voter rights are being voted out of the constitutions of the states. That's something that, as humans, as U.S. citizens, as people, we need to just take a stand first and fix, and then we can go back to fighting about okay, well, do corporations have the rights to deal with these things for their workers? Because if we don't take a stand about what's happening with the country, then then these corporations may lose the powers that they have to do business here. So realistically, these corporations have more financial power altogether than our government does. And back when our Constitution was written, when the Declaration of Independence was written, when like all the way back, like they were written so that no one man, like I mean, the militias would not be able to rise up, or would be able to rise up and take over the government if something happened. Well, the U.S., like if you look at the people right now, there's no way that like you could get neighbors to agree enough to stand up and rise against the government. I mean, even when they tried to, like it fizzled out in an hour. You know, there's no way that we would have a civil war against like with.
I don't know. I just want. I was just.
No. My point is that the corporations have to do this. Like if somebody's going to make change in government, it's going to be the corporations, and that's why they're standing up. Even if they didn't, like, even if they like haven't cleaned out their own basements, like even if there's skeletons in the closet, they need to stand together on something like this.
So Vito, I'm just puzzled why, because I might be very cynical, Vito. I don't really think these companies really care shit about the Constitution of the United States of America. These are global companies with a global attitude. You know, listeners and viewers, there's been an ongoing dispute in the UK with British Gas that sacked over 5,000 gas engineers a couple of days ago. So there's a big hoo-ha in the UK over that, isn't there? You know, why do you think they've done this? Because am I being totally cynical, or can you why have they done it, Vito?
I think you are really, because why not? You know, they have the power, and they have the people to actually stand for these things. When you look at corporate culture in tech, it's a lot about diversity. It's a lot about building the right culture within. And I think that as these companies, really, like Heather is saying, they have more power than governments nowadays. I think that this culture, this internal new corporate culture, it's not the financial corporate culture. You know, it's a completely different ball game. Is starting to sift out of those companies and with those kinds of initiatives. So really, I'm all up for it. If the government won't do it because they can't, who is gonna tell Google and Microsoft that they can't? You know, I understand from a politician point of view why they can't, even though it's bad, but this is what's wrong with politics. With companies, it's actually, you said it right, that it's good for business, but I also think that it's a matter of internal culture that is echoing out, for them being globalized, them being diverse and stuff like this.
So Spencer, am I totally cynical? Because I just consider this a glorified PR exercise, and the only thing these companies are interested in, and I mean only, is the color green, and that's the end of the matter.
I think the answer to the question lies in what all of you guys kind of alluded to, and specifically like Heather spoke to, is that if you look at the nature of politics in America today that leads to these kinds of behaviors, you could see very clearly, and let's just call it what it is. The Republican Party is a pro-racism party. And furthermore, because of it being in disarray, its members, especially the newer ones, have decided that it's in their own selfish best interests to essentially do or say anything they can in order to stay in power as a diminishing number of white people, mostly white males, but now a few white females who are pro-gun. And the reason that they need to do that is they have been proven from back in the Gingrich days all the way forward that their voters don't have long-term memories, don't care about hypocrisy. They just basically are a smaller and smaller set of Americans who are racist at their core, which is sad. Now, the corporations kick in on this because the corporations only care as long as it's news. So, for example, today in Georgia, everybody pulls out. As soon as the news dies down, they're going to trickle back in. That's how it's going to happen. The only way that this ever gets solved is if enough people have enough outrage, which thankfully that seems to be happening, about the problems with police violence, the problems with blatant racism, the problems with core fundamental voter rights. What I find really ironic is how obvious, if anybody is objectively looking at the history, this cycle goes. I mean, I'm sure there are good Republicans somewhere still, and even John Boehner, who used to be a total a-hole, looks like a saint. George Bush II looks like a saint, because in comparison to today's people, at least they had the integrity to say, we are not doing this just for our own political power. We're doing it for some higher moral purpose. But right now, you can just see the cycle with the COVID, with the financial crisis, with the debt, with the racism, with the police violence. When the power shifts back to Democrats, a greater number of Americans across the spectrum of race and economic levels benefit. And when it goes to Republicans, it's this entire Tucker Carlson mindset of like up is down and down is up, and and then you mix into it the Matt Gaetzes and the rest of the hypocrisy about things like child abuse and misogyny and rape and incest, and it's like, my God, how could we possibly have a country this diametrically opposed? And as Heather pointed out, guess what? The almighty dollar is the only thing that pulls the needle over uniformly, because as soon as Coca-Cola or MLB or anybody else says, see you later, Georgia, all of a sudden, well, wait, we weren't really serious about locking kids in cages and, giving guns to felons and stuff like that, or taking away your voting rights. And that lasts as long as the news keeps on showing that story. So it's sad, but it's just, as a 54-year-old, exhausting, because I've been around long enough to see how this works through several shifts of administration. I just wish people would just start to come out and say, I'm Republican, I'm a racist, and own it, because that's basically what it is. I can't see how anybody could be a Republican and not consider themselves a racist, with the exception of maybe these few mea culpa people, right? Like, you've got your Mitt Romney, you've got your Cheney, you've got your John Boehner, who like, hey, I'm old school. I don't agree with these guys, but I don't have enough power to change it. And I don't think anybody in the Republican Party can go back to what it was.
Rightio, thanks for that. What a witch's brew. We're going to go for our break, and we're going to come back with some other stories about tech. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. We've had a mixture of stories. I think it's been an interesting discussion. Where else would you get this, folks? Good or bad? Before we go on to our next story, another great sponsor of the show, and that's Conversio, our great hosting provider. I think one of the stories that we are going to be talking about might be about them. I'm not sure. Oh yes, it's number 5 if we get there. But they are a WordPress only hosting provider. The founder came on the show a few weeks ago, showed me the back end and what they have to offer, and it was very impressive. And their focus about really providing really great service. So, Vito, they hosted your great virtual conference, didn't they? And it was a great success, wasn't it, Vito? And they were really fantastic partners, were they not?
They were amazing partners. Last time we tried to take the hosting on our own, and that failed miserably. On the first day, the whole platform crashed, and we were running on like 280 requests per hour, 280,000 requests per hour. And so, at this scale, it's a completely different ball game. And back then, Tom from Conversio was sponsoring the event, and he was the one that got us back on track within minutes. It's just like, send me the FTP, I'm gonna move everything over, and we got back on Conversio even last year, and from there on it was smooth sailing. So the cool thing about their platform is that it is it's designed for scale. So like, I wouldn't use it for those standard standard basic small business websites, because it is overkill for these kind of stuff. But if you have a website that has a lot of traffic, if you have a website that has spikes in traffic, like let's say you're going on Shark Tank or something, you're not going to show how that's going to work out, then that's when load balancers, the distributing into different nodes, that's where these things really come into play very effectively. And I think that Conversio are the only guys in the space currently that are doing this thing.
Yeah, I compare them to Pagely in some ways, too.
Right.
Both
Maybe.
great companies, and they're offering you, if you've got a website that needs that type of performance, or you've got clients that need it, they're offering a great offer. If you go to the WP-Tonic website, you'll see that one of their banners on there. Click it will take you to a landing page, and this is an amazing offer. They're offering 30% off all their plans for the lifetime of the plan. And you can only get that through WP-Tonic. So I suggest that you should take it up. So on to the next story. Recent patches rock Alameda ecosystem. What did you think of this one, Spencer? This comes from wordfence.com. It does seem to have been almost like an avalanche of these recently, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, the mechanical reason I would surmise, based on writing a plugin that works off of Elementor, is that, first of all, Elementor is a huge ecosystem of people making add-ons. So whereas you might have one accessory maker or two in some places, you have like dozens and dozens and dozens. Second of all, is that, after version 3.0, Elementor has been very dynamically upgrading how they do stuff. And all credit to the company. I mean, Ben and his team are just doing like amazing stuff. But like, think of that compared to the Gutenberg team. I have to say it. When you move fast and you move furious, there's room for the bad guys to come in and sort of like find out where you left the door open or something. And I just see that that's happening. However, I like the fact that in the WordPress ecosystem, we now have the auto updates. And furthermore, WordFence is doing a tremendous job. It's a plugin that I originally never used to install. And now I install that versus like Securi or versus iThemes, because WordFence automatically will protect you against these kind of things if you're caught with a site that has the plugins, and it will also notify you. So it's one of those like, yeah, this sucks, but it's as easy as upgrading by clicking the button. And since you're sort of protected in most cases with WordFence, the answer is keep doing what you're doing. Use the WordFence plugin for free. And enjoy the fact that there's a company out there moving at light speed to make cool stuff.
So you think now that it doesn't have any sizable, the free product doesn't have any sizable performance hit? Because when I last looked at it, that it seemed to have that.
You talk about the WordFence? WordFence?
Yes,
plugin?
WordFence, yeah.
No, the only thing that I recommend you do with WordFence for free, and this is kind of like one of those no big deals, go into the email configuration and turn off the 8 million things it will email you about by default. So you only need to know like vulnerability super high or the site is definitely being hacked. Those two are good to have an email. But otherwise you will get like 1,000 emails a day from them. So other than that minor issue, which takes 2 seconds, no big deal. So
what do you reckon about this, John?
Yeah, it does seem like there's a lot of these add-ons that are vulnerable, and it's a really good reason to have some sort of maintenance plan in place. Whether it's somebody like WP-Tonic or Atarium or any of these other services out there, but unfortunately, like, software is always being updated. And the reason being is because people find these vulnerabilities. Your computer at home updates all the time. And your website is no different. So it's unfortunate that when you're a big target, like a plugin like Elementor, and there are these side vectors like these add-on plugins that attackers will try and find vulnerabilities in these adjacent vectors. But using a security plugin, it will at least alert you to like what's going on. But having someone that can update those plugins when on a regular basis and making sure that everything is up to date, it's a good way to go.
So what do you reckon, Vito? Is there a conspiracy against Alameda?
No, it's just a matter of like the guys are saying, software gets updated, the ecosystem changes all the time, and there's like a billion variations within the space for different plugins and their add-ons and the core and the stack and the server and the additional plugins that react to some of the other plugins and the user errors and the bad practices, and the custom themes, and like there's a billion places where things can collapse. Regarding this, or what I would like to kind of mention is that this is not a hack. This is a vulnerability notice that you might get hacked. So this means that what is cool about the ecosystem is that it self-corrects. So there's this challenge of all of these variations within the system, and then there is companies like WordFence, like WebArcs that now rebranded to something I don't remember the new name. Like WP Scan, all of these awesome security-based companies that run these, investigations for us. So I've been subscribed to the WordFence newsletter for a decade or so, and just so that I'm in the know, I turn off all of the notifications on the websites, as you're saying, Spencer, because I don't need that. I don't need that mess in my life. But I do read the newsletter once a week when it comes out, so I know what to act on. What they do is they allow you to fix the problem before it becomes a problem, and I think this is a smart thing to do.
I actually found, because the weeks are just merging recently, I'm not sure it was last week or the week before, that thing about PHP, where in the core PHP that somebody had injected. I found that more scary than anything. I think you did as well, Spencer, didn't you? I thought that was really quite scary, wasn't it?
I mean, there's some plugins like that are really useful, like the Advanced File Manager, but if you have one of those that has a problem, you've kind of like left the keys to your house open with your passport, social security number, bank account all laying on the kitchen table.
The door is open. The door is wide open.
Yeah, at that point, you got to do a rollback. It's worth mentioning, by the way, for those that don't understand this, because this happens almost every day when I'm dealing with people. There was a time when using sandboxes or staging sites was in vogue. I think that time has passed. I think the way that people should build sites now, here's why. Because almost all the sites we build are dynamically based. In other words, they function not because of what the style of the theme or the plugins or the CSS is, but rather because the interaction of the plugins and the users. So what we go is a model of fly the airplane, do the mechanics on the airplane while you're in the air, but make regular frequent backups on the fly. So if there's a problem, you do a time machine reversal to go back an hour, and you lose only 60 minutes versus trying to pretend that you can simulate the reality of your dynamic website in a sandbox and then somehow move that over and merge it to the realities of a dynamic website. It's almost impossible. So for certain sites, maybe it makes no difference. Like if you have static,
it depends on the support level.
You can't do live updates in production. I mean, like if you've got clients on your site,
it depends on the scale of the site. If you have an enterprise, obviously, sure, you're not going to pull that off. But if you have a site that has a couple thousand subscribers, WooCommerce, we do this up to 5, 6, 10,000 people. Here's why. Because the thing that you're doing, if you do it in stages, like it's small little bites, it's very clear whether it works or it doesn't right away. And if it doesn't work, you just hit the reverse button, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you're out. I agree with you, Heather. If you have 100 developers in an enterprise and like who did what, when, where, why, and you've done all these at once, that's a bad idea. But for many people, these are like small small things. I'm putting in.
I agree with both of you. Actually, it really, my experience is that you're spot on in many ways there, Spencer. But it really, but the reason why I also agree with Heather, it depends on the support. There's some companies that we support where it's not easy, but we do the more traditional. But we're spending a lot of time on it, but it's still problematic. Where on most sites that you're talking about, Spencer, your position is the better one in reality. So, Heather, you want to finish this off?
Yeah, I mean, like, I had one person. I mean, even on a small company, like the entire company was only 12 people, and just making one accidental change to a Shopify's shipping page, or no, the code, the discount code, like, while she was at a conference and didn't have enough internet, like, she put a check in, she put a code, cost the company $100,000 before anybody was able to check. So, like, basically, don't do live updates in production. like this is a thing. Anyway, yeah, that's.
If you have multiple developers, I agree with Heather that, like, the biggest problem is whatever method you're using. Like, if you're using GitHub, right, and you're basically merging, it's really impossible with multiple developers to do any kind of live updates, because it's random happenstance who did what, when, where, why. So it's really the type of funnel you got. If you have, like, everything goes through one person who can watch and know what was done, then it's a little safer. Clearly not always the case if you have a large scale operation.
No, but it's really, but you are right. The reality is when you got a very dynamic website, you literally, if it's public facing and they're making considerable money, the only way you can get around it is that you're literally going to put a splash screen and say we're in maintenance mode, and they're not going to be happy with that.
Yeah, because if you
because they're losing money. So
any SaaS company has a 99% SLA, like, written into their contracts, most likely. So you can't do that. You can't be down.
But you try, unless you're going to spend a lot of time with this particular area, you're on a substantial contract. But there we go.
I mean, the small people who come for let's say the average WooCommerce developer or WooCommerce user or WordPress, they're really having a struggle to try to understand how to use the staging site properly and what to do, because they go, oh, look, it looks so beautiful when we designed it in staging, and then, oh, wait a second, in the meantime we changed the WooCommerce product checkout experience and 4,000 people have already bought the product. How do we merge the staging changes to this? It's like, good luck. Now we got to go through a whole, like, database operation and stuff. So, different problems for different.
It's been an ongoing problem. There's been a couple of companies, one of them that I do respect. They had a go of trying to solve this problem, and they had to give up because their solution wasn't working. And there's been other people that have had a go at it, but I don't know of any satisfactory solution. In a technical engineering, it seems to be one of the hardest problems.
What I would suggest around what you're saying, Spencer, and kind of finds the middle ground between Spencer and Heather here, is what we do is we have a staging environment where we do the update. So we basically do the round twice. We do it there, we check everything, and then we deploy, well, not deploy, but then we just click update on the live website also. So you're kind of you're duplicating your work, but you're saving yourself a lot of headaches in the long run.
That's what we do. It really depends. John helps me with a couple of clients that we're on a stage higher than that, Vito, but they're paying quite a lot of money, and John does it. Helps me out a bit with those type of clients, and it's much more elaborate. But you get what you pay for, yeah. Shall we got time for another yeah, let's go for number 4, and then we'll go for our recommendations and that. Apple trust oh god, Perfivo,
Phobia.
for its tradings. Now, I think this is an ongoing problem, ladies and gentlemen. I know I have my pronunciation problems, but why don't you, if you've got a bloody company, name it something you can pronounce, can you? For God's sake, please do that. Fine tradings, but maybe you should think twice. What do you, it starts with Spencer, because you've had your ups and downs with Apple, haven't you, Spencer? Haven't you? I thought this is interesting. This doesn't really, this third party company doesn't really seem to gel with what Apple like to promote about themselves, do they?
No. I mean, the downfall of Apple, in my opinion, has come from post Steve Jobs, where they lost track of their internal ethos.
Compass, I would say.
Compass, if you will. But the idea is that the behavior in the last couple of years have been extremely anti-consumer in their nature and anti-right to repair and so forth. And even in the Apple Genius bars, where I think the workers are well-intentioned, they're given a set of protocols that are essentially kind of like, take it or leave it. The options are always in favor of somebody having to pay double, triple what they would normally pay. In some cases, paying for things that weren't even their fault or wrong. And people who are advocates like this Louis Rossman, who I enjoy watching every day on his YouTube channel, he's a repair person in New York City who just shows how ridiculous Apple has a defective product, like the cable that is welded in now for the screen is too short, and they will do things like they'll give a limited warranty replacement for, let's say, 1 year model, and yet the next 2, 3, 4 years the same thing is done. They don't give those people the same benefit of doubt. Well, this is another example. You've got like $3 trillion of capital stashed away. You're outsourcing everything to sweatshops. You're not paying taxes. You're not making really super innovative stuff, and yet you're outsourcing now the core thing, which was you got like a trade-in program that's supposedly being run by you, but you're allowing some shady named third parties to do it. And
and you can't even pronounce the company's name.
Phobio.
You know?
The point is, whether it's Phobio or another one, I just find this a disappointing example of how it seems like the companies with the most capital have now become these, again, monopolistic monoliths. There's 10 or so companies and founders that I was seeing another article about this, which is tangibly related. There's like 10 people in the world that have over $100 billion of wealth each. So their combined wealth of 10 people is $1 trillion. And the point is that these are people that aren't getting taxed, aren't susceptible to the same rules as everyone else, and run companies that, like this, you go, what's the purpose of this? Like, why can't Apple afford to have its own trade-in program and do it in a reasonably like open and honest way? Because I do feel Steve Jobs was capitalist, but he would never risk his personal integrity and getting caught with his hand in the cookie jar with stuff like this. You know.
So, Heather, what do you think? I'm just trying to get the mindset. You know, obviously, got to keep control of costs. Obviously, in a business, it's not. You know, you want to get sales are important. Sales are the engine of a company, but also you got to keep your costs under control. This is basic 101 of running a business. You know, but what the fuck are Apple thinking of employing these tossers, Heather?
Well, honestly, it's so. I mean, honestly, I've had no trouble with my trade-ins for Apple products, but I always do it in the store where they do it like right there. And as far as the shipping, I don't know if it's controlling costs at all, because it costs. I mean, they do free shipping both ways for the trade-ins, and like if you're shipping a computer to them, and then they're shipping it back to you, I mean that's a substantial cost right there that the company has to eat, because I mean there's like lithium battery costs that they have to pay on top of the shipping. The boxes that they're putting them in are expensive. So I mean, I'm guessing that whatever, like when when they're opening it up in their company, and they have to wipe everything down. Because I remember when I trade them in person, they have a process where they take the wipes, they wipe things down, they make them clear. So if most of these complaints have to do with white spots, so perhaps it's during this process, the investigators or QA people are looking at them before they've completely dried, and they're saying there's white spots here because of the disinfectant they're looking at, and then they send it back. So, I mean, I think that they just have to look at the QA process more for this particular company, and then just let them go. But yeah, I mean, I think that company is being overly cautious, and there has a problem with their QA process. But I don't think it has to do with cost, because they're definitely eating a lot of profit out of that.
All right, thanks for that. That's a great insight. Thanks for that, Eva. I've had an experience with them recently where I had extended warranty on a MacBook Pro, and I needed some repairs, and they still wanted to charge me a considerable amount of money. So I was polite, but I find that you got to, I am with most people very polite. But they got my very stern look, my English stern look, Vito, and I put my foot down and said, this doesn't really match my understanding of what I signed up. We had to go back to the manager. Oh, yes, you're right. We'll get it repaired. Come collect it. Still hadn't been repaired. Another stern, very calm, very stern voice. Oh, we're going to have to, we cut what we're going to charge you in half. Oh, right, that's fine. I'll be back in a few days. They keep sending me emails saying it's finished. Go back. Still not done. Oh, we won't charge you at all now. Very firm voice saying, oh, yeah, that's fine. And I was expecting the fourth time they were actually going to give me a new Mac. But in the end, they managed to repair the thing. So I'm getting the impression that they're losing track of what's going on in their own company. So that's my impression. So let's go to recommendations. The panelist recommendations, but before that, I want to mention a webinar that me and Spencer Forum are doing. And when are we doing that? That is a good question. Blah blah blah. Let's have a look. Yep, it's going to be Friday the 14th of May at 10:30 Pacific Standard Time. I'm really looking forward to the series of webinars that I'm doing with Spencer. Spencer, can you quickly tell the listeners and viewers what we're going to be discussing on Friday the 14th of May? You're mute. Or maybe it's me.
So that was like your dream come true, that I'd be moving my mouse, but no noise would come out. We've been doing a 3-part series that we're converting from a webinar into a mini tutorial. So if you've joined us afterwards, you can already watch the first episode, if you will, the first installment, which happened in April. We're really showing people how to create a modern membership site on WordPress using the stack of components that, follow this new method, which is, yes, we've got 250,000 things to choose from, but really there's a core 6 to 10 components that are all really curated, work together, work with marketing automation. If you follow this method, it's much like Lego blocks. You'll have a foundation onto which whatever you choose to build in the future can go up to the sky. The first installment was how to identify the stack of plugins. The second we're doing in May is how to configure that stack and snap them together in a way that is not old-fashioned, that requires specific plugins that are accessories, but rather uses all the plugins in their lane connected with tags and other automation things like fields. And if you want, you can watch the first video for free. Give your name so you'll get the link to come to the second event in May. And then that'll be published, and then we'll do the third event. And all of this will then be available as a free download anyway. But what we're trying to do is to introduce people to some of the free tools and how to do things so that you don't end up with one of two problems. Either shiny ball syndrome, which is, oh my God, there's 250,000 things I could choose from. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Or the Frankenstein monster, which is I put in that old membership plugin that I used to love, and guess what? It just ran into all the other plugins in the parking lot and made a big mess. And now what do I do? So I encourage everybody to do so. There won't be any spam or any follow-up. And this is a StreamYard, which worked really well. So unlike Zoom and so forth, you're given your email just so we can send you the links. And if you want, you can tell us to bugger off. But in the meantime, it's not like a high commitment thing. It's obviously the videos are going to be there. It's just if you want to get the notice of when it's live so you can show up on YouTube and start typing questions and stuff.
I think that's great. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great discussion. All right, so let's go to our recommendations of the week. Mine's a cheap way of, or a quick way of getting a one-click out checkout experience with WooCommerce. They approached me. They showed me what they got to offer. They actually, today, they should have publicly declared that Automatic is investing in them, actually. That's what the founder told me was going to be announced. That's Peach Bay. I have a link. It looked pretty interesting to me. Go and have a look at it. Vito, have you got anything you want to recommend to the listeners of this?
I'll bring you back to what we started with without bringing things down. But I shared a few products by IdeaBox, Power Pack for Beaver Builder, Power Pack for Elementor, that following up on the WordFence article has been patched since this discovery. WP-Formify, which is a great kind of little widget for the corner of the screen that tells people that they bought, how many people are watching currently, creates FOMO, really. And as well as DiviMonk, which is like templates and kind of structures for Divi. So, support the team, support the family of the founder, and these are great products anyway that I managed to use on a bunch of websites. Formify is something that we use with a bunch of clients. Power Pack for Elementor as well. So go for it.
Yeah, make sure you put the link into Slack, Vito. Then
in Slack. I need to log into Slack.
No, you need to look. Unfortunately, it doesn't give me a copy on this particular platform. Spencer, you got anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, for anybody who wants to build a website, there's a new company. It's called Wix. No, just kidding. Actually, I want to say that I had a chance to revisit canva.com. Melanie Perkins created this company a while back. She's a really, really dynamic person and was well known for making this thing that is, for those who don't make graphics their main business, it's a tool that at first it was a little janky and it was a little rough-edged, but they're a company that has gone really, really far. Here's why I want you to go visit it. I'm creating new assets for the WP Launchify. There are tools that I use locally that everybody knows about, you know, your Photoshops and your blah, 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 and your drag and drop. But when I went to Canva, it's free to use, or you can get a free sample of the premium. And I'm not a big fan of the premium, but here's where it kicks together. When you want to make really clever stuff that has all the, remove the background and throw in a royalty-free image, and you want to make the shape, all of a sudden they've, over 5 years or whatever, magically got just the right combination of stuff that I can honestly say, as a cynical user of every possible tool, it honest to God made the job 50% to 100% easier than using my normal array. So if you got to make stuff like for your new website that's going to use Elementor or it's going to use Divi or whatever, you still need the core assets, the background images and the various things, and you need to put your brand kit together. Try it. Go back, try the free. I don't know, it's free, but you could try the free premium for whatever it is a month. They're very generous. I was shockingly surprised in a good way. So
that's fantastic. Thanks for that. John, got a recommendation to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, this is from our friends at Crunchy Links. This is an article on how to find backlinks.
I just love that name, Crunchy Links.
It's a great name. It's easy, memorable. But this is an article.
Vito, I hope you are taking notice of that, Vito. I'm sorry.
Is that
I mean,
Crunchy?
it's like Led Zeppelin. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything
Yes.
until it does means only that, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
But an article on how to find backlinks to your site gives you 5 different ways to kind of figure that out, and then you can figure out what your link gap is and how to go about getting some links to your site.
Which is a joyous process, isn't it, John?
Oh, totally.
Totally joyous process. Lovely, jubbly. Heather, got anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, so I know a lot of the WordPress people are using WordPress as their site, but they have people that are developing it for them. So Integromat is a great app for create. It's like Zapier, but it allows you to create connections to all sorts of different things on the internet. So like if you have your Google Sheets. And I mean, if you want to create like a database for your WordPress site, or if you want to send SMS messages to people that have signed up to your contact form, you can create all these scenarios, and there's all sorts of templates of things that people have already created, and it's a lot cheaper to use than Zapier. So and there's a lot more integrations that you can have. So check out Integromat.
Yeah, I'll vouch for the fact that we use Integromat for our onboarding and one of the project plans, because what it does do, as Heather alluded to, is it allows you to, let's say, create a database of stuff, and it will assemble it together into either a Google document or a PDF. And I don't believe we could find any way to do that with Zapier. So it's really powerful.
Isn't that what your company does, though, Spence? No.
What's that?
Isn't that what Fusion does?
No, what I mean to say is, like, let's say I'm having an interview with somebody. I have a form that I ask a bunch of questions about the person, the company, so forth. I type in answers. We take that data, we send it through Integromat. Integromat then decides on conditionals, puts that into a Google Doc that has the places, or into a PDF. And what's interesting is it works with the logic of your Gravity Forms fields in a way that, depending on what I type and how I type it, assembles all the pieces at the other end. So it's like literally a factory to build the final report, where I don't have to go back and copy paste or do anything. And I wasn't able to figure out how to do that with Zapier. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it is neat.
It's amazing. It's amazing, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just more logic in the process.
And it's a drag and drop thing to create. And also, like, if you have any trouble, they have a great community of people that is like, hey, I need to put this to this. This is what I'm trying to do. And then, like, people are like, oh yeah, and then done.
Just to finish off, panel, before we end the show, what did you think of Boston's robot, whatever they call themselves? The police dog, the canine robot. What did you think of that one, Spencer?
You know, it was interesting. A lot of people were commenting who've never seen it before, but I also saw the interview with the founder of Boston Dynamics, unrelated to that. A couple of things is that if you watch, the guy who's controlling the robot is walking along with the radio controller. So it's kind of like, you know, if you have a radio control truck or car, it's not like the dog is really independent. Nevertheless, if it was your first time seeing it and you see it walking around with a bunch of body armored cops, everybody immediately went to, like, this doesn't look so good, right? Like, this is, because they're all, you know, the cops are good guys, I'm sure, but they're all sort of flexy looking, like, check out the new toy we got to hassle you in your home. And I think that's where the problem with all this is going, is that there's a huge PR problem from the Hollywood past and the current state of police behavior that, boy, oh boy, they can't come out with more toys to do stuff to human beings until they figure out the rest of how regular human cops are dealing with human beings. You know what I mean? That's the concern I have, is this is just taking that to a new level of, holy shit. Like, are these going to start shooting people on site now, like the real police are? So.
I thought Heather's our technologist. Heather, I just thought it was like a Pandora box moment where you really could see a really, really very ugly future if we go down a certain road. You really, in those few 2 minutes of video, these coppers with their new toy are just lovely, lovely jubbly, wasn't it?
So, anyone that has Netflix, check out the episode of Black Mirror,
Yeah,
Metalhead.
yeah.
And it talks about, I mean, it'll give you a dystopian version of what happens. But I actually work with a company that makes these. I mean, not Boston Dynamics, although we do work with those too. But like in my work with the military, we work with these dogs, so I can't really talk
Have
too
you
much.
got no
about
kind of inkling that this might not be a great idea, Heather?
No, I honestly, so these like the dogs are being used in places that humans can't go, and they're saving a lot of lives. So I mean, my perspective on it is they're great. I mean, like, just think of all of the lives that are being saved in Afghanistan and Syria and places like that, where like before we had to send humans in to like see if there was a landmine, and now we can send these robot dogs in to test, and it's yeah.
I'm sure. I knew you were going to say this, Heather, and you're saying it very sincerely. But I think you're being very naive, Heather.
Yeah.
Grossly naive.
The problem is the cost factor. Right now, the New York City one, many of the comments, besides the police behavior part of it, and Heather is very sincere, and I believe that her opinion is valid. I wouldn't discount that, but I do feel it's all contingent upon the motive of the officers using it. And so when they talked about the budgetary thing, though, the people were saying right now New York City's in a crisis where you can't afford like a decent bed in a shelter for a homeless person, or you can't afford food for kids who go to school because they put the kids' families on the debt system, and yet they could spend whatever it is, $75,000 or $175,000 on a robot dog.
What cost a human life, though? So if you send a robot dog in there to check out a room instead of sending an armed policeman that might accidentally shoot their gun,
but
so
the problem
the dog isn't going to shoot anything.
The problem is the invalid use, which is, in this case, it looks good if you look at the bright side of the coin. But if you look at the flip side of the coin, which is there's a fixed budget. What priorities should the budget be spent on when there's obviously deficits in lots of human services? And B, even if it's used for police work, what if you get one of those cops from like NYPD Blue that has a bad day and uses it to, do something nefarious, which is going to happen. We know it's going to happen, because that's why the police are running around with these $3 million body armor budgets and AK-47s. It's not because every shootout is like the movie Heat. It's because they see a 13-year-old kid and they gun him down as soon as he raises his hands. So,
and I want to make it clear, Heather.
Think of them like the Malps in Stargate SG-1. They're sending these dogs in ahead to see if there's anything that they need to do, and they're staying behind, and it's allowing them to have a clear head where they haven't been.
Now, but I'm not saying this one incident. I'm saying look at the incidents like the cases where the police went to the wrong address, the wrong apartment, knocked down the door, shot the lady.
They're not gonna have their guns. They're gonna send the Malp in ahead of time.
I'm saying I'm not saying the word naive. That's Jonathan's. I'm saying it would be naive for anyone.
I want to clarify that.
That's not the next step.
Can I just butt in, because I want to clarify this. I meant this. Heather's one of the most intelligent women I know. So I mean that I use the word naive not as a
No. I know what you're saying. But I mean, the thing is, like, I've been in these trainings for these officers that are getting these. I mean, and like, you don't get one everything is like, this is. Like, you don't get one if you're going to use it in a bad way. It's like, this is the forward.
I really feel, and it must be. I'm just going to let Vito, John, see if they want. I really feel, Heather, that is
today. That's true. Tomorrow it won't be. There's that spray.
I understand. I totally understand why you're saying that, Heather. But I just think it's crazy talk. I've got to be honest with you, Heather. I think it really is Pandora's box waiting. And if you feel that this won't be used for terrible purposes, It's totally
Well,
bonkers,
so
Heather.
what are-
It
I mean,
really, it
Well, that's the
really
thing.
is,
What are
Heather.
the terrible purposes? Like, I mean, and
It will
if,
be
if
used. It will be used to oppress and kill women, children, and in the end, and it sounds ridiculous in a way. In the end, it could be a threat to the human condition. It really is totally bonkers, Heather.
how much worse than in China right now or in UK right now, where there's cameras everywhere?
Well,
Because
they won't kill you, though, would they?
these are independently able, not fully automated or autonomous, but close to fully autonomous. Soon they may be connected to being AI autonomous, but they're semi-autonomous, capable of movement and traversing, whereas the cameras are a problem in themselves, but they're fixed devices for monitoring. The difficulty I get is that every kind of tool that had initially a good purpose has been distorted into a tool for evil. Even something I was going to suggest, like that spray foam that we use in construction to fill the spaces between the wall studs. They've been using it in a military sense where they spray crowds with it. And if you've ever seen how this works, you get coated with it and then it expands. And the people who got sprayed with this basically get locked down or their face is covered. Unfortunately, they discovered it worked so freaking awesome on crowd control that they want to use it, but 4 out of 5 people suffocated because it covered their face. And yet they're still testing it. The point is more of, why do police officers need tools that go beyond the psychology or the human interaction level? And if they do that, what stops it from going to the beyond today's stage of it just being used to look at a bomb? We've always seen robots that do bomb control, that they drive in there to look at the bomb. Why do they need a dog that can open the doors and sometimes have a gun in the future to go do dirty work? Because there'll be armies of them. We all know there will be. I mean, that's not even science fiction.
I would much rather have a programmer like that is controlling a robot dog than a person that is not thinking clearly that will shoot a 13-year-old.
But why can't the person with the remote dog just press the gun? Now he's detached from the kid.
It's a lot easier, yeah. It's a lot
It's like a
easier.
video game. Oh, kill that kid with the robot dog. I mean, it's just the same thing extended.
It's not it. Yeah, and it's not even the tools. It's the system. It doesn't matter like what tools the police have. It's not that they're not clear-headed. It's that they lie. The lady that shot the one kid, like, oh, I thought it was a taser. It's a lie. The system is there to kill black and brown people. And they will use whatever tools are available. That's the system.
Vito, fair enough, John, but Vito, recently the Metropolitan Police broke up a group of women that were complaining about a woman that was raped and murdered in Clapham, and they decided if they had these police dogs, how well do you think the Metropolitan Police would do?
I don't think they would get this stuff into the UK. Like, there is really, you see banners on police cars against knives. There are no guns. Policemen have no guns. And I think that's the right approach. Coming from a country that everyone has a gun. I had a gun for 3 years while I was in the army, always with you. An M16 always hanging on you when I was 18. It's crazy thinking back, so I'm all for no guns. Get them out of the way. Like, sometimes you don't need aggressive tools. Like, you're just creating more of a problem by escalating the situation. I see that in protests all over the world. And I can even give an example from the UK. When I first moved in Israel, the police is very, very similar to the police in the States in their mindset. It's pretty aggressive in the way that they do things, but in the UK it's really not like that. And when I first came here, I was busking. I was playing in the street and just making some money when I was just got into the country.
Yeah, we get some great comments here from the viewers. Heather Daniels points out, Heather, they're using, and I agree, I think they were using this particular example. They were using it for a political message, Heather, clearly, in my opinion, and it was to intimidate residents in that particular area where they're already using it for evil intent, Heather.
So, what I think
it's even started, Heather. And as far as I was concerned, it was staged, as Spencer pointed out, but it was staged to intimidate those people, Heather. It was quite clear to me, Heather.
I don't know if I would go as far as what John is saying, and there's kind of a middle ground between the two aspects, I think. But really, it's a mentality decision. It's a policy decision how you approach those different aggressive situations or charged situations. If you are there to create more stress over it, then you're just gonna bring out hell from the other side.
But to be fair to Heather, this is very difficult because all technology, genetics, nuclear power, they can be, we can get great benefit. But I just feel when this particular area, Heather, the reason why I'm a bit harsh is I think it's just a freaking nightmare, Heather. It's it's so clearly a really crappy idea, and to me that it's gone beyond that difficult choice with a lot of technology has, Heather.
Well, so I mean, my personal mission statement, like everything that I do, is to make the world more like Star Trek than Skynet. And I'm trying to actively make the world not like. I don't want RoboCops and Terminators going around this planet. So, like, if I'm telling you that I'm working with the people that are making these robot dogs, then like I know that I'm helping to make sure that the trainings for the officers, that the trainings for the army around the world, that the people that are using them, like it's all about the ethics of the operators. So if the people that are using them are ethical in their use, then they will be ethically used.
Initially.
But the people that use them will then continue to train them, and the training and because the robots themselves are agnostic. There's nothing about them.
We're seeing in Georgia and other political places, that's how we started the show. That's not how it works. The problem is that one police department that gets training is ethical. Then it gets sold to another police department that appears because they want the dog. Oh, yeah, we'll follow your rules. Sure. Next thing you know, it's Boss Hogg and the boys are sending the dog down to hassle dark-colored people, because that's what we're living in, is a world where we're in 2021. I love, by the way, your example that you want the world to be like Star Trek instead of Skynet. I feel the same way. But we're also living in a world where the people living in 1890 are still roaming amongst us. And it's like 49% of America seems to feel like they want to go back to slavery or something.
And that's why it goes back to my point about how the corporations are going together and saying, we will not do business with you.
I mean, you're right in that sense.
We relied on the moral positions of American corporations, Heather. We're so fucked up that we have no future, because the only freaking morality they've got is the color green. And if anybody thinks any different,
honestly, but Jonathan, like, we are a capitalist world, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with capitalism.
I have Christian principles, Heather, that I won't cross.
Okay, dude.
They're just a mindless. They're just a mindless organization.
No, conscious capitalism. Conscious capitalism is like the Quakers, like Cadbury. They are. You don't have to have. You can be an ethical capitalist. There is nothing wrong.
The problem is that you can have just a few that are not, and that's where the whole thing just collapses.
And that's why we have to band together.
I mean, even in the Star Trek universe, there was the Borg, and then there's
Ferengi,
the Federation. So the Ferengi. So the point is, I think what we really need to accept, and this is part of that conversation, is the world, the universe, the spiritual world even, is never going to be everybody's good or everybody's evil. I think there is the yin and the yang, and the conversation really comes down to what are the ethics of introducing something that escalates the fight into another level of technology? Because we do have some choices about whether that's acceptable to begin with. Like we talk about AI, we're going to all have to deal with AI showing up everywhere now. And as soon as it gets into AI mixed with genetics, aren't we right back to like eugenics in 1939 and all that conversation again? And now with racism. So we keep going on this circular thing. Everybody moves the technology up a notch. And we have to talk about why half of the people are on the dark side and half the people are on the light side.
I mean, even with the Borg, like in Star Trek, there's the Borg, but they're in balance with everyone else. Like they are assimilating, but they're assimilating like
for their own ethical philosophy.
Oh, I think we'll wrap this up there. Heather, you've been, I do admire your position. I've given you a hard time, Heather. You dealt with it really very graciously. I do appreciate you coming on the show, Heather. I wasn't picking on Heather. I fundamentally disagree with Heather's position, but I respect. You know, I do respect your position, Heather. I just think you want to watch that episode of
Black Mirror, yes.
The Black Mirror a few more times, Heather. That's what I suggest. We're going to wrap it up now, folks. Thanks for your contributions. I think it's been a fantastic show. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye.